In the NFL, teams live and die by their decisions. A single trade can turn a franchise into a dynasty, or set them back for decades. So here are the 10 worst trades in NFL history. Number 10. The Texans trade DeAndre Hopkins. Looking back at it, I still can't believe this happened. DeAndre Hopkins was easily one of the best receivers in the league at the time. However, the Texans decided to trade Hopkins for David Johnson, a second-round pick, and swapped fourth-round picks with Arizona for Hopkins and a fourth-round pick. Johnson was a disappointment in his 2 seasons with the Texans. He had a total of 919 yards in just 2 seasons. Hopkins went on to dominate in his first year in Arizona. He finished with over 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns, but he did miss significant time in 2 of his 3 seasons in Arizona. But this was still a terrible trade for Houston. Number 9. The Browns traded for Deshaun Watson. In 2021, the Houston Texans made a blockbuster trade, sending Deshaun Watson to the Browns. The Texans received 3 first-round picks, a third, and 2 fourth-rounders. The Texans turned those picks into Will Anderson, Tank Dell, and Kamari Lassiter, who are all key pieces for them. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson has been average at best. He is nowhere near the same player he once was with Houston. He's thrown for over 3,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions in his time with Cleveland. Number 8. The Houston Oilers trade Steve Largent for an 8th round pick. Selected in the 4th round by the Oilers, Steve Largent didn't even make it to Week 1 in Houston. Instead, he got traded to Seattle for an 8th round pick in 1977. The Oilers' impatience proved costly, as Largent went on to have a Hall of Fame career in 14 seasons with Seattle. He made 7 Pro Bowls and ranks 11th all-time with 100 receiving touchdowns. Number 7. The Broncos traded for Russell Wilson. In March 2022, the Broncos sent the Seahawks 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th round pick, plus tight end Noah Fant and defensive lineman Shelby Harris, and quarterback Drew Lock in exchange for Wilson, and another 4th round pick. In Wilson's first season with the Broncos, he threw for over 3,500 yards and 16 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Russell Wilson went on to be a huge disappointment with the Broncos and was released 2 years later. Number 6. The John Elway trade. The Baltimore Colts could have had one of the greatest quarterbacks ever after selecting Elway first overall, but that didn't last long. They traded Elway to the Denver Broncos after he refused to play for them. Elway became one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. He led the Broncos to 5 Super Bowl appearances and 2 championships during his 16-year NFL career, while the Colts struggled until Peyton Manning arrived nearly 2 decades later. Number 5. The Bill Belichick trade. In the year 2000, the Patriots completely finessed the Jets. Bill Belichick was named the Jets head coach, but a day later, he resigned because he accepted the position of head coach for New England. The Jets sent their 5th and 7th round pick along with Bill Belichick, and the Patriots sent their 1st, 4th, and 7th round pick. And what happened next? 6 Super Bowls and a dynasty, and 2 decades of dominance for Bill Belichick. Meanwhile, the Jets still suck. Number 4. The Ricky Williams trade. First, we gotta talk about this picture. This might be the most diabolical pick I've ever seen. I don't understand the thought process behind this. But Mike Ditka, who was coaching the Saints at the time, believed in Williams so much that he traded his entire draft to Washington to move up and get him. Yes, you heard that correctly. His entire draft class. Williams had a solid career, but the Saints got nothing from this gamble. Ditka was fired a year later, and Ricky would eventually be traded to Miami. Number 3. The Chargers trade up for Ryan Leaf. In 1998, the Chargers sent 2 first-round picks and a 2nd-round pick and 2 players to the Cardinals to move up from number 3 to number 2 in the 1st round. They then selected Ryan Leaf 2nd overall. In his 2 seasons with the Chargers, Leaf threw for 13 touchdowns to 33 interceptions before being released in 2000. Leaf is considered one of the biggest draft busts of all time. Number 2. The John Haddle trade. The John Haddle trade is widely considered one of the worst in NFL history. In 1974, the Green Bay Packers traded a massive haul to the Los Angeles Rams for the aging quarterback. The deal included 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a 3rd round pick. Haddle, who was already 34 years old, struggled mightily in Green Bay. He threw just 9 touchdowns and 29 interceptions in his time with Green Bay. Meanwhile, the Rams used this draft capital to build a strong roster and remained competitive for years. The trade set the Packers back for the rest of the 1970s, making it one of the most lopsided deals in NFL history. And number 1, the Herschel Walker trade. This is probably the worst trade ever. In 1989, the Vikings thought they were getting a superstar running back, but instead, they gave the Cowboys a dynasty. Dallas received 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, and a 3rd round pick, and also a 6th round pick. Walker was with the Vikings for 3 seasons, failing to rush for over 1,000 yards in either campaign. Meanwhile, Jimmy Johnson turned those picks into legends like Emmitt Smith and Darrell Woodson. The Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls within the next decade, while the Vikings got 3 seasons of Herschel Walker and nothing else. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing.